Alright, we are here live with break 363. Today's break, we'll be doing the 25 Traders Case, and tomorrow we'll be following up with the 21 Traders. The team list for break 363: Lee Marschall with the Broncos, Raiders Ethen, Bulldogs Daryl, Sharks Karen, as well as Dolphins, Titans Byron Scott, Manly Sean Peter, Melbourne William Goodger, Knights Nicholas Verwey, Cowboys William Goodger, Eels Karen Adnum, Panthers Karen, Rabbitohs Daniel Bunt, Dragons Nicholas Verwey, Roosters Daniel Bunt, Warriors Guy Turner, and Tigers Nicholas Verwey. Alright, that's our case sitting there ready to go. We'll open that up in just a second. Let me finish getting these screens back. There's our team list. Alright. Let's find out the case card for today's case. Number 25. Who we got? William with the Cowboys, Jake Granville. Get these out. So Dolphins, Karen will receive the $100 gift card as they are not in tomorrow's break. Well, Karen is, but Dolphins isn't. May need to shut that front door. Alright. Box number 1. Let's go. I feel like it's been a while since we've done a break. Haven't had a chance to chat. I'd like to know what everyone's thoughts are of rivalry. Rising stars for the Warriors. I think there's quite a few nice cards in there. The hammer parallel for the Dolphins. The starter pack bonus cards. I quite like them. Pardon? 2.5. It's 12 boxes. Season to remember to Man Martin for the Warriors. Jai Arrow parallel for the Rabbitohs. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Fan phase, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Jack Bostock parallel for the Dolphins. Just give me 2 secs, sorry guys. Anyway, guys, let's go. Sorry about that. Organising basically construction work outside around us. I think Mum was trying to make come back later. And it's like, well, we've got breaks over the next 3 days, so let's just work around each other. We'll be right. Ben Hunt season to remember for the Dragons. Joseph Tarpanay parallel for the Raiders. Bring the chat back up. Fan phase, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Jack Whiten parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Lycan King for the Dragons. Luke Brooks parallel for Manly. Club Heroes, Ethen Strange for the Raiders. Justin Olam parallel for the Tigers. G'day, mate. Nice hit to start off your break. Grace Kemp, Women's NRL for the Raiders. G'day, Lee. Welcome, mate. Sharks parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Cowboys parallel checklist. I'm not sure what those icons are popping up in the chat next to people's names. They're new. Quincy Dodd, Gold Women's Parallel, number 2 for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Kai Pearce-Paul, parallel for the Knights. Elite pre-sales up now. Sales flyers out. Season to remember, Cam Munster for Storm. Jacob Little, parallel for the Dragons. Johnsy, this year's Master Series. Another Blues, gotta like that. Fan phase, Will Penasini for the Eels. Nick Meaney, parallel for the Storm. And last one to finish off. Be interesting to see what we get next year. Tamika Upton, Women's NRL for the Knights. Spencer Lanu, parallel for the Roosters. Seen some different opinions or thoughts on what Select might do next year. The one I did like is the captain's signatures. I think they would be very popular. Lapoi Hapoi, a Rising Stars for the Bulldogs. Jaden Campbell, parallel for the Titans. I don't know if they'd be able to pull it off these days, getting captain sig for all teams. But that would be a good set. Showcase, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Mitchell Barnett, parallel for the Warriors. Fan faves in the team for the Storm. Broncos parallel checklist. I'm sure everyone's seen the Lomax league sensation. I'm not going to lie, I quite like the look of them. They're looking good. I'm pretty sure it's only the white one, so if that's what the white looks like, excited to see the team. Matt Burton, white converters for the Bulldogs. A Valami kick-out parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Peter for the Rabbitohs. Scott Sorensen, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Trey Fuller for the Dolphins. Mitchell Moses, parallel for the Eels. Fan phase, Thomas Hazelton for the Sharks. Max King, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Broncos. Joe Offengowie, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Victor Radley, parallel for the Roosters. Lauren Brown, converters for the Titans. Murray Talagi, parallel for the Cowboys. Jessica Surgis, women's NRL for the Roosters. KO Weeks, parallel for the Raiders. Gold parallel Cowboys checklist number 79. Isaac Tago, parallel for Panthers. Gold converters, Sam Walker for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Lily Ann White for the Knights. Tavita Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Addo Carr for the Bulldogs. Jeremy Marshall King, parallel for the Dolphins. Fan faves, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Manly parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Liam Eason for the Sharks. Adam Dewey, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Lazarus for Storm. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, parallel for the Warriors. Premiership predictor for the women. Knights, number 6. Thomas Hazelton, parallel for the Sharks. I think if I had a jersey number predictor, I'd be trying to get the redemption signed by whoever that jersey number is. And if you're lucky, you might have multiple players play that number throughout the year and you can get multiple signatures. There you go. Club Heroes, Bree Chester for the Cowboys. Phoenix Crossland, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Ethen Bullymore for Manly. Jaden Stewart, parallel for the Dragons. Showcase, Luciano Alei-Lua for the Dragons. Tony Staggs, parallel for the Broncos. You'd almost have to put a sticker on your redemption card so as you're getting it signed throughout the year, they don't sign over the sticker, so when TGI punch it, they don't punch one of your signatures. Season to remember, Jared Hargraves for the Roosters. Xavier Coates, parallel for Storm. And last pack for our first box. Fan Phase, the Hammer for Dolphins. Alifiana Khan Piera, parallel for Titans. Box number 1, done and dusted. Bit quiet in the chat today. I know everyone's busy at work. Season to remember, Ronaldo Mulatalo for the Sharks. Jeremiah Nanai, parallel for Cowboys. Fan Phase, Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Morgan Smithies, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce-Paul for the Knights. Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Club Heroes, Julia Robinson for the Broncos. G'day, guy. Welcome, mate. Felice Kafusi, parallel for the Dolphins. Stacey Waka, Women's NRL for the Broncos. Molly Olaka-Atu. Parallel for Manly. Oh, it's classic. That's a long toilet break, mate. Gold parallel, Amoli Olika R2, number 48 for Manly. Get out. Rising Stars, Samuel for the Sharks. Tigers parallel checklist. Season to remember, Sanua Taruva for Panthers. Payne Haas parallel for the Broncos. Fan phase, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Nathan Cleary parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Benjamin Takura for the Broncos. Dylan Brown parallel for Eels. Converters, Racine McGregor for the Dragons. Stephen Crichton parallel for Bulldogs. Women's NRL Tigers checklist. Angus Crichton parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Max Plath for the Dolphins. Helam Aluki parallel for the Cowboys. Jamal Fogarty, season to remember for the Raiders. Ethan Strange parallel for the Raiders. Fan faves, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jacob Laban for the Warriors. Herbie Farmworth parallel for Dolphins. Gold parallel, Kira Dib for the Cowboys at number 127. Tommy Talau parallel for Manly. Club Heroes, Liam Henry for Panthers. Charlie Staines parallel for the Tigers. Retirement, Dale Finucane for the Storm. Sharks, sorry. I didn't even look, it just come out. Wade Egan, parallel for Warriors. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for Broncos. Converters, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Moses Leota, parallel for Panthers. Kennedy Sherrington, Women's NRL for the Eels. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Clint Gutherson for the Eels. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. King Gutho looking more like Viking Gutho at the moment. Fan phase, Josh King for the Storm. Ruben Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Elia for the Roosters. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Tommy Talau for Manly. William Kennedy, parallel for the Sharks. Fan phase, Brian Tar for Panthers. Dylan Lucas, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Caleb for Manly. Raymond Fatala Mariner, parallel for the Dragons. Showcase, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Harry Grant, parallel for Storm. Converters, Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Big Tino, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for Storm. Tackling Machines, number 10. Wade Egan for the Warriors. Jackson Ford, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Fan phase, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. phase in the team for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for the Panthers. Parallel, Eliza Katoa for Storm. Showcase, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Titans, Parallel Checklist. Let's go. Season to remember, Xavier Coates for Storm, Luciano Alei-Alua, parallel for the Dragons. Fan Faves, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Storm, parallel checklist. Lindsay Collins, a gold parallel number 23. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Mawaki Fodawaika, parallel for the Titans. Club Heroes, Tamika Upton for the Knights. Chance Nicole Cockstad, parallel for the Warriors. Elsie Albert, Women's NRL for the Eels. Adam Reynolds, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Felice Kafusi, parallel for Dolphins. Fan Faves, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Amali Olaka-Atu, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Samuel Stone Street for the Sharks. Tigers, parallel checklist. Converters, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. William Kennedy, parallel for the Sharks. Holly May Dodd, Women's NRL for the Raiders. Dylan Lucas, parallel for the Knights. Fan Phase in the team for Warriors. Rising Stars, Caleb Navale for Manly. Raymond Faitala Mariner, parallel for the Dragons. Season to remember, Samantha Bremner for Roosters. Harry Grant, parallel for Storm. Mark Nichols, fan phase for the Dolphins. Big Tino, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for Storm. Jackson Ford, parallel for the Warriors. Millie Elliott, gold parallel for the Roosters, number 54. Payne Haas, parallel for the Broncos. Club hero, Samula for the Tigers. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Benjamin Takura for the Broncos. Dylan Brown, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Jacob Laban for Warriors. Herbie Farmworth, parallel for the Dolphins. Has anyone else seen their video of Des Hasler ripping up the Titans? That was insane spray. Latrell Mitchell, converters for the Rabbitohs. Tommy Talau, parallel for Manly. Isabel Kelly, women's NRL for the Roosters. Charlie Staines, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Fan phase, Reed Marnie for the Bulldogs. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for Panthers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Liam Martin, parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Sean Lane, parallel for the Eels. Fan phase, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. Jacob Carraz, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Roosters, parallel checklist. Showcase, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Jeremiah Nanai, parallel for Cowboys. Gold Converters, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Morgan Smithies, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce Hall for the Knights. Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Alexis Tornay, season to remember for the Dragons. Stephen Crichton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Fan phase, Reece Welsh for Broncos. Angus Crichton, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Max Platt for the Dolphins. Helam Lukey, parallel for the Cowboys. Showcase, David Fafita for Titans. Ethan Strange, parallel for the Raiders. Retirement, Elliot Whitehead for the Raiders. And Rabbitohs parallel checklist to finish off the box. Alright, let's go. Box number 4. Fan faves in the team for Broncos. Jack Bostock, parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Lycan King for the Dragons. Luke Brooks, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Justin Olam, parallel for the Tigers. Showcase, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Jai Arrow, parallel for the Rabbitohs. I'm just glad it's not the Eels, William. Fan phase, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Sharks parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Alaya Nasio for the Roosters. And Tackling Machines, Georgia Hale for the Titans. Number 56. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Kai Pearce Paul, parallel for the Knights. Converters, Taylor Preston for the Sharks. Jacob Little, parallel for the Dragons. Tommy Turbo, fan faves for Manly. Ruben Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Quincy Dodd, women's NRL for the Sharks. Nick Meaney, parallel for the Storm. Rising Stars, Hapoi for the Bulldogs. Jaden Campbell, parallel for the Titans. Tony Stagg, season to remember for Broncos. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, David Armstrong for the Knights. Mitchell Barnett, parallel for the Warriors. Fan phase, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Broncos parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Peter for the Rabbitohs. Scott Sorensen, parallel for Panthers. Women's Gold, Melly Hafunga for the Broncos, number 184. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for the Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for the Bulldogs. Converters, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Mitchell Moses, parallel for the Eels. Club Heroes, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Eels. Max King, parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Victor Radley, parallel for the Roosters. Hannah Southwell, Women's NRL for the Knights. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Dale Finucane for the Sharks. Murray Talagi, parallel for the Cowboys. Van Faze, Mackenzie Wiki for the Raiders. KO Weeks, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Lily Ann White for the Knights. Tavita Totola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Club Heroes, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Moses Leota, parallel for the Panthers. Showcase, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Jeremy Marshall King, parallel for the Dolphins. Xavier Savage, gold parallel for the Raiders, number 58. Manly parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Liam Eason for the Sharks. Adam Dewey, parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for the Broncos. Converters, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Thomas Hazelton, parallel for the Sharks. Women's NRL, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Phoenix Crossland, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Ethen Bullymore for Manly. Jaden Sewer, parallel for the Dragons. Fan Faze, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Wade Egan, parallel for the Warriors. Daly Cherry Evans, season to remember for Manly. Xavier Coates, parallel for Storm. Fan Faze, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Alifiana Kampi Era, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Lazarus for the Storm. Roger Tuivasa Sheck parallel for the Warriors. Season 2 Remember Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. Titans parallel checklist. Alright, let's go with box number 5. Fan phase Harry Grant for the Storm. Bryce Cartwright parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Regan Campbell-Gillard for the Eels. Dylan Edwards parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Leilani Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston parallel for the Bulldogs. Excuse me. Women's NRL, Batil Vet Welsh for the Tigers. Dolphins parallel checklist. Showcase Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Connor Watson parallel for the Roosters. Fan phase in the team for Rabbitohs. Jason Taumalolo parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Tane for the Warriors. Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Fan phase, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Ronaldo Mulatalo parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Bradman Best parallel for the Knights. Women's NRL, Gail Broughton for the Broncos. Alex Seafarth parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Brighton Nakora parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Lachlan Gowan for the Tigers. Kalen Ponga, parallel for Knights. Rising Stars, Ethen King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Converters, Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Fan phase, Greg Marschall for the Knights. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Gold Converters, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. AJ Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Club Heroes, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Warriors, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Fan phase, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Showcase, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Gold parallel, number 178. Shannon Mato for the Titans. Lindsay Collins, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Mawala Graham for the Warriors. Daly M. Predictor for the men's. Number 7 in the Warriors. Max Platt, parallel for the Dolphins. Converters, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Jake Trbojevic, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Fan phase, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Knight, parallel checklist. Gold parallel, Dylan Brown for the Eels, number 34. Rising Stars, Hopawate for Manly. And Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Sione for the Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. How long is he out for, William? Do you know? Club Heroes, James Tedesco for the Roosters. And Cam Munster, parallel for Storm. 5 packets left for box number 5. Women's NRL, Shaylee Bent for the Titans. David Fafita, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars for Storm. Yeah, right. Tohu Harris, parallel for the Warriors. Season to remember, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Ezra Mam, parallel for Broncos. Fan phase, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Isaiah Yeo, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for the Broncos. And Micah Sivo, parallel for the Eels. Alright, halfway through box number 6. Season to remember, Alafiana Khan-Pierre for Titans. Tommy Turbo, parallel for Manly. Jacob Preston, fan faves for the Bulldogs. Samola Fainu for the Tigers. Gold parallel, Bobby Law for the Dragons, number 91. Rising Stars, Chevy Stewart for the Raiders. Nico Hines, parallel for the Sharks. Club Heroes, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Dane Gagai, parallel for the Knights. Sharks Women's NRL Checklist. Dragons Parallel Checklist. Rising Stars Liam Henry for Panthers. Trent LaRoe parallel for Storm. Rising Stars Blake Steep for the Roosters. Raiders parallel checklist. Sam Walker converters for the Roosters. Keelan Kolomatangi parallel for the Rabbitohs. Emma Manzelman, Women's NRL for the Cowboys. Jermaine Isako, parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Casey Ray for the Dragons. Ruben Garrick, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Apasai Coruscant, parallel for the Tigers. Ruben Cotter, fan phase for the Cowboys. Cameron McInnes, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys. Greg Marschall, parallel for Knights. Fan phase in the team for Roosters. Jack DeBellin, parallel for the Dragons. Club Heroes, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita, parallel for Titans. Season to remember, Tamika Upton for the Knights. Tamir Martin, parallel for the Warriors. Converters, Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Reese Robson, parallel for the Cowboys. Women's NRL, Racing McGregor for the Dragons. Matthew Tomoko, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Vanessa Biddle, season to remember for the Sharks. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for the Dolphins. Fan Phase, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Tolatoiku Ala, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Georgia Hanaway for the Sharks. Jareen Buller, parallel for the Tigers. Season to remember, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Keanu Kinney, parallel for the Titans. Fan Phase, Alex Twal for Tigers. Dallin Martin Zalesniak, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Rory Owen for the Eels. Reece Walsh, parallel for the Broncos. Showcase, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Panthers parallel checklist. Big Tino gold parallel for the Titans, number 5. Will Penasini parallel for the Eels. Converters, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Josiah Pahulu for the Titans. Matt Burton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Stacey Awaka for the Broncos. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. Fan Phase, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Fan Phase, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. Dean Mariner, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian Top, parallel for Panthers. Showcase, Luke Brooks for Manly. Eels parallel checklist. Retirement, Brad Parker for Manly. Reid Marnie, parallel for the Bulldogs. Last packet for the box. Rising Stars, Samula for Tigers, and Sam Walker, parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Samantha Bremner for the Roosters. Harry Grant, parallel for Storm. Fan phase, Mark Nichols for the Dolphins. Big Tino, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars, Joe Chan for the Storm. Jackson Ford, parallel for the Warriors. Club Heroes, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. And Payne Haas, parallel for Broncos. We'll take the jumper off quickly. It's warming up. Women's NRL, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Nathan Cleary, parallel for Panthers. Gold parallel, the Hammer for Dolphins, number 76. Rising Stars, Benjamin Takura for Broncos. Parallel, Dylan Brown for the Eels. Season to remember, Alexis for the Dragons. Stephen Crichton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Converters, Rachel Pearson for the Eels. Leo Thompson, parallel for the Knights. Women's NRL, Lauren Brown for the Titans. Blake Laurie, parallel for the Dragons. Fan faves in the team for Titans. Rising Stars, Maverick Gaia for Panthers. Eliza Katoa, parallel for Storm. Season to remember, Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. Titans, parallel checklist. Fan phase, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Wade Egan, parallel for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Charlie Geimer for the Eels. Selwyn Cobbo, parallel for the Broncos. Gold parallel, Rachel Pearson for the Eels, number 57. Moses Leota, parallel for Panthers. Club Heroes, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Jermaine Hopgood, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Tony Francis for the Titans. Connor Tracy, parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Tony Staggs for Broncos. Dominic Young, parallel for the Roosters. Converters, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys, parallel Justin Olam for the Tigers. Women's NRL, Romy Tietzel for the Broncos. Sharks, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Kai Pearce Paul, parallel for the Knights. Season to remember, Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Jacob Little, parallel for the Dragons. Fan Phase, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Nick Meaney, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Hapoi for the Bulldogs. Jaden Campbell, parallel for the Titans. Reece Walsh, fan faves for the Broncos. Angus Crichton, parallel for the Roosters. Rising Stars, Max Platt for Dolphins. Helam Lukey, parallel for the Cowboys. Showcase of Alami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Ethan Strange, parallel for the Raiders. Converters, a gold, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Rabbitohs parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jacob Laban for the Warriors. Herbie Farmworth, parallel for Dolphins. Jamie Chapman, season to remember for the Titans. Tommy Talau, parallel for Manly. Reed Marnie, fan faves for the Bulldogs. Charlie Staines, parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Tackling Machines, Nat Butcher for the Roosters. 101. Jesse Ramian, parallel for the Sharks. Fan phase, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Ruben Cotter, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Aliyah Nasai for the Roosters. Jamal Fogarty, parallel for the Raiders. Showcase, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Jai Arrow, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Isaac Liu, retirements for the Titans. Parallel, Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Last pack for box number 7. Rising Stars, Lycan King for the Dragons. Luke Brooks, parallel for Manly. Season to remember, Azali Faye for the Eels. Panthers, parallel checklist. Fan phase, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Will Penasini, parallel for the Eels. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Titans. Matt Burton, parallel for the Bulldogs. Club Heroes, Elsie Albert for the Eels. James Tedesco, parallel for the Roosters. Millie Elliott, Women's NRL for the Roosters. Scott Drinkwater, parallel for the Cowboys. Gold parallel, Batil Avet Welsh for the Tigers, number 58. Rising Stars, Blake Steep for the Roosters. Raiders parallel checklist. Season to remember, Sean Johnson for the Warriors. Keon Kolomatangi parallel for the Rabbitohs. Fan phase, Blake Laurie for the Dragons. Jermaine Isako parallel for the Dolphins. Rising Stars, Casey Array for the Dragons. Ruben Garrick parallel for Manly. Gold Converters, Lauren Brown for the Titans. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. And Jojo Fafita parallel for Titans. Converters, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Tamir Martin parallel for the Warriors. Women's NRL Night checklist. Dean Mariner parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian To'o parallel for Panthers. Season to remember, the Hammer for Dolphins and Eels parallel checklist. Fan phase, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Reed Marnie parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Samula for the Tigers. Sam Walker parallel for the Roosters. Fan phase in the team for Tigers. Reese Robson parallel for the Cowboys. Club Heroes, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Matthew Tomoko parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Latrell Mitchell parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Hopewate for Manly. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Adam Pompey, converters for the Warriors. Cameron Munster, parallel for the Storm. Women's NRL, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. David Fafita, parallel for the Titans. Rising Stars for the Storm. Tohu Harris, parallel for Warriors. Season to remember, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Ezra Mam, parallel for Broncos. Fan faves, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Isaiah Yeo, parallel for Panthers. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for the Broncos. Micah Sivo, parallel for the Eels. Showcase, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Parallel, Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Gold parallel, number 31, Moses Leota for Panthers. Parallel, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys. Greg Marzhew, parallel for Knights. Jerome Hughes, season to remember for Storm. Jack DeBellin, parallel for the Dragons. We've got 5 left for box number 7. Fan Faze, Kennedy Sherrington for the Eels. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for Storm. Fan Faze, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Toltor Koala, parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Georgia Hanaway for the Sharks. Dream Buller, parallel for the Tigers. 2 to go. Showcase, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Retirements, Kyle Felt for the Cowboys. And Knights parallel checklist. That was box number 8, not 7. My bad. Up to box number 9. 4 to go. Let's go. Season to remember. Chad Townsend for the Cowboys. AJ Brimson parallel for Titans. Fan Phase Dream Buller for the Tigers. Warriors parallel checklist. Showcase Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Parallel Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Rising Stars Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan parallel for the Broncos. Romy Teetle, the Converters for Broncos. Dylan Edwards parallel for Panthers. Fan Phase Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Alex Seyfarth parallel for Tigers. Rising Stars Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Brighton Nakora parallel for the Sharks. Casey Ray, Women's NRL for the Dragons. Bryce Cartwright parallel for the Eels. Fan Phase in the team for Eels. Rising Stars, Leilani Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston parallel for the Bulldogs. Season to remember, Jock Madden for the Broncos. Connor Watson parallel for the Roosters. Jaden Campbell, season to remember for the Titans. Jake Trbojevic parallel for Manly. Molly Olakau'atu, Fan Phase for Manly. Jason Taumalolo parallel for Cowboys. Rising Stars, Ethen King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. And our first signature, number 58, in the team for the Knights, Greg Marschall. Nicholas Verwey with the Knights. Nice, clean signature. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Moala Graham for the Warriors. Max Plath, parallel for the Dolphins. Club Heroes, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Dolphins parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Sione Fainu for the Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans parallel for Manly. Women's NRL, Shania Power for the Cowboys. Cody Walker parallel for the Rabbitohs. Season to remember, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Lachlan Galvin parallel for the Tigers. Fan phase, Jakaya Whitfield for the Cowboys. Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Bradman Best parallel for the Knights. Club Heroes, Jerome Hughes for the Storm. Xavier Savage parallel for the Raiders. Showcase a group card. Randomize that at the end. Luciano Leilua parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Jerome Hughes parallel for Storm. Gold parallel number 31, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden parallel for the Cowboys. Gold Converters, Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Storm parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Milwaukee, Fodawaika, parallel for Titans. Converters, Apasai Coruscant for Titans. We're back. Everything's good. I don't know what happened, why we dropped out. Rising Stars, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Liam Martin, parallel for Panthers. I think it's this laptop starting to have some gremlins, I've noticed lately. Season to remember, Bradman Best for the Knights. Sean Lane, parallel for the Eels. Zach Lomax, a season to remember for the Dragons. Bulldogs, parallel checklist. Fan Faze, Dallin, Martin, Zalesniak for the Warriors. Jacob Carraz, parallel for Bulldogs. 2 packets to go for the box. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Roosters, parallel checklist. Women's NRL Gold Raiders checklist number 86. Now I've lost my team list. Where's my team list? There you go. Ethen with the Raiders. Nice. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for Dragons. And that's another box done and dusted. Leaving 3 to go. Let's start back at this end and we can make room for these ones. Fan Faves, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Dylan Lucas, parallel for the Knights. Rising Stars, Caleb Navale for Manly. Raymond Faitala Mariner for the Dragons. Season to remember, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Kalen Ponga, parallel for the Knights. Fan Faze, Greg Marshew for the Knights. Kyle Flanagan, parallel for the Dragons. Rising Stars, Casey McLean for Panthers. Jerome Hughes, parallel for Storm. Rising Stars, Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Tigers, parallel checklist. Season to remember, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. William Kennedy, parallel for the Sharks. Club Heroes, Alexis and Angelina for the Dragons. AJ Brimson, parallel for the Titans. Women's NRL Taylor for the Knights. Warriors parallel checklist. Women's NRL Jasmine Peters for the Cowboys. Molly Olaka'atu parallel for Manly. Rising Stars, Dan Kerr for the Eels. Patrick Carrigan, parallel for the Broncos. Season to remember, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Eels. Dylan Edwards, parallel for Panthers. Fan phase, Harry Grant for the Storm. Bryce Cartwright, parallel for the Eels. Converters, Jamal Fogarty for the Raiders. Felice Kofusi, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Lailani Montgomery for the Titans. Jacob Preston, parallel for the Bulldogs. Showcase, David Fafita for the Titans. Connor Watson, parallel for the Roosters. Stacey Waka, gold parallel for the Broncos, number 45. Jason Tormalolo, parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Kai Pearce-Paul for the Knights, and Cameron Murray, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Ethen King for the Roosters. Hudson Young, parallel for the Raiders. Season to remember, Tainei for the Warriors. Alex Johnston, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Fan faves, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Dolphins parallel checklist. Gold converters, Nathan Cleary. Morgan Smithies, parallel for the Raiders. Gold parallel, number 52, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Sione for the Dragons. Daly Cherry Evans, parallel for Manly. Jocelyn Keller, converters for Roosters. Lachlan Galvin, parallel for Tigers. Women's NRL, Tally Holmes for the Sharks. Renato Mulatalo, parallel for the Sharks. Fan faves in the team for Manly. Rising Stars, Lily Peacock for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Evie McGrath for the Tigers. Roosters, parallel checklist. Showcase, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Jeremiah Nanai, parallel for the Cowboys. Season to remember, Xavier Coates for Storm. Luciano Alua, parallel for the Dragons. Fan faves, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Storm, parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Harry Hayes for the Bulldogs. Mawaki Fodawaka, parallel for the Titans. Fan phase, Tiana Penatani for the Sharks. Jacob Carraz, parallel for the Bulldogs. And our White Authentics, number 20, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders. Chance Nicole Clockstead, parallel for the Warriors. Club Heroes, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Adam Reynolds, parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Liam Martin, parallel for Panthers. Last packet for the box, 2 boxes to go. Season to remember, Herbie Farnworth for the Dolphins. And Sean Lane, parallel for the Eels. Season to remember, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Apisai Coruscant, parallel for Tigers. Fan phase, Reuben Cotter for the Cowboys. Cameron McInnes, parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Harrison Edwards for the Cowboys. Greg Marschall, parallel for the Knights. Club Heroes, Max Plath for the Dolphins. Jack DeBellin, parallel for the Dragons. Abby Church, Women's NRL for the Eels. Ryan Pappenhausen, parallel for the Storm. Fan phase, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Matthew Tomoko, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Latrell Mitchell, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Converters, Nick Meaney for the Storm. Isaiah Katoa, parallel for the Dolphins. Women's NRL, Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. Tolator Koala, parallel for Manly. Gold Converters, Rachel Pearson for the Eels. Rising Stars, Georgia Hanaway for the Sharks. Dream Buller, parallel for the Tigers. Season to remember, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Blake Brayley, parallel for the Sharks. Fan phase, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Night parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Hopper Wate for Manly. Tyrell Sloan, parallel for the Dragons. Fan phase in the team for the Raiders. Cameron Munster, parallel for Storm. Club Heroes, Tommy Duden for the Cowboys. David Fafita, parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Oren Keeley for the Dolphins. Tommy Dearden, parallel for the Cowboys. Converters, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Xavier Savage, parallel for the Raiders. Women's NRL, Roosters checklist. And Cody Walker, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Moala Graham for the Warriors. Max Plath parallel for the Dolphins. Season to remember, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Jake Trbojevic parallel for Manly. Fan phase, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Alex Seyfarth parallel for the Tigers. Rising Stars, Grace Kemp for the Raiders. Brighton Nakora parallel for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Jojo Fafita parallel for Titans. Season to remember, Tamika Upton for the Knights. Tamir Martin parallel for the Warriors. Fan phase, Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Dean Mariner parallel for the Broncos. Rising Stars, Dion for the Rabbitohs. Brian Toto parallel for Panthers. Showcase, Lachlan Galvin for the Tigers. Eels parallel checklist. Rabbitohs gold parallel checklist number 54. Reed Marnie parallel for the Bulldogs. Rising Stars, Samula for the Tigers. Sam Walker parallel for the Roosters. Season to remember, Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Reese Robson parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars for the Storm. Tohu Harris parallel for the Warriors. Season to remember, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Ezra Mam parallel for the Broncos. Fan faves, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Isaiah Yo parallel for Panthers. Gold parallel, Jocelyn Keller for the Roosters, number 27. Rising Stars, Skylar Adams for the Broncos. Parallel Micah Sevo for the Eels. Showcase Ethen Strange for the Raiders. Parallel Bulldogs checklist. Last packet for the box. Retirement Edric Lee for the Dolphins. Lindsay Collins parallel for the Roosters. Alright. Get these tidied away and we will get stuck into the last box for the break. Let's go. I don't know how many tackling machines we have got or retirements. I know we have both our predictors, we have our white and we have our team signature. So hopefully in this box we will hit a black sig or a legends. So don't go anywhere, we are almost at the end. Let's see how we go. Season to remember, David Armstrong for the Knights, Mitchell Barnett parallel for the Warriors. And that's just my little fingers crossed. Bring a bit of luck to our last box. Fan faves, Tohu Harris for the Warriors. Broncos parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Cowboys parallel checklist. Season to remember, Madison Bartlett for the Raiders. Joseph Tarpanay parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Peter for the Rabbitohs. Scott Sorensen parallel for the Panthers. Club Heroes, Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Mitchell Moses parallel for the Eels. Women's NRL, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Max King parallel for the Bulldogs. Club Heroes, Dry Grey for the Rabbitohs. Spencer Lanu parallel for the Roosters. Gold Converters, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Rising Stars, Lachlan Galvin for Tigers. Parallel, Victor Radley for the Roosters. Season to remember, Dale Finucane for the Sharks. Murray Talagi parallel for the Cowboys. Rising Stars, Josiah for the Broncos. Joe Offengowie parallel for the Eels. Ezra Mam, Gold parallel for the Broncos, number 75. Malami Kickout, parallel for the Bulldogs. Fan phase, Mackenzie Wiki for the Raiders. KO Weeks, parallel for the Raiders. Rising Stars, Lily and White for the Knights. David Tola, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Showcase, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Jeremy Marshall King, parallel for the Dolphins. Fan faves, Alexander Brimson for the Titans. Isaac Tago, parallel for Panthers. Fan faves in the team for Dragons. Manly parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Liam Eason for Sharks. And our Authentics Black, number 32, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Daniel Bunt with the Roosters. Adam Dewey, parallel for Tigers. Season to remember, Dally Cherry Evans for Manly. Thomas Hazelton, parallel for the Sharks. Season to remember, Isaac Tago for the Panthers. Katoni Staggs, parallel for Broncos. I'm assuming you mean elite because we have a rivalry which is just listed on the website. And in saying that, the elite pre-sales have already gone up on the website as well, but they aren't expected for release until the 20th of August. But rivalry, if you haven't already looked at it, guys, we do have the singles up on the website. We haven't got them all, but I'm in love with the prodigies, the head-to-heads. There's one more in the standard ones. I'm trying to think of what it's called now. I don't know. Maybe that's, yeah. You got State of Origin. Yeah, that's the starter packs here. Nathan Cleary, fan faves in the Panthers. Phoenix Crossland, parallel for the Knights. Fan phase, Sylvia for the Rabbitohs. Jack Whiten, parallel for the Rabbitohs. Rising Stars, Dimitri for the Warriors. The Hammer, parallel for Dolphins. Rising Stars, Lazarus for Storm. Roger Tuivasa Sheck parallel for the Warriors. Showcase Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Tommy Turbo parallel for Manly. Gold parallel number 69, Georgia Roach for the Knights. Samula parallel for the Tigers. Women's NRL, Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Alefiana Khan-Pierre parallel for Titans. Rising Stars, Chevy Stewart for the Raiders. Nico Hines parallel for the Sharks. Converters, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Dane Gagai parallel for the Knights. Women's NRL, Samama Torfa for the Raiders. Dragons parallel checklist. Rising Stars, Liam Henry for the Panthers. Trent LaRoe parallel for Storm. Converters, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. Xavier Coates parallel for the Storm. Season to remember, Rebecca Pollard for the Tigers. Keanu Kinney parallel for the Titans. Fan faves, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Dallin Martin Zalesniak parallel for the Warriors. Friend, buy me a box of Rivalry. Rising Stars, Rory Owen for the Eels. Reece Welsh parallel for the Broncos. And Lucky Last Packet. Rising Stars, Ethen Bullymore for Manly. And Jaden Sewer parallel for the Dragons. Alright, well that's it for the break. To finish us off, we have to randomise our group showcase card. We have everyone loaded in and ready to go. So we'll flick over our screens and get that done now. Alright, 3 times around the merry-go-round. Person in spot 1 on the 3rd time and gets the card. Here we go, number 2. And lucky last, number 3. Lee Marschall with the Broncos. There we go. Nice and easy, done and dusted. Alright guys, don't forget to come and check us out tomorrow for the second case in break 363, our 21 Traders case. Until then, that is all. Hope you had a ball.